Your English humour will not help, Mr. Honey. These men will stick at nothing, and I am the only one who can stop them. If they are not stopped, it will take a matter of days, perhaps hours, before the top secret and highly confidential information is out of the country. And when it's out of the country, God help us all.
What about the police?
The police? The police did not believe me any more than you did, with their boots and whistles. It is up to us, Mr. Honey. These men act very quickly. You don't know how clever their chief is. I know him very well. He has a dozen names. He can look like 100 people, but the one thing he cannot disguise, this part of his little finger is missing. So, if ever you should meet a man with no top joint there, be very careful, my friend. Morning, Mr. Honey. How are you keeping? What a lovely morning this morning it is this morning. Oh, what about this here heat wave? Never seen nothing like it. People dropping like...
So, been in these parts long?
No, I'm from Glasgow.
Glasgow?
Do you ever see it?
No, I never did.
Oh, aye, you should. You should go to Socket Hall Street on a Saturday night with all its fine shops and the trams and the lights. Oh, and the cinema palaces and the crowds. Saturday night tonight.
Well, I've never been to Glasgow, but I've been to Edinburgh and Montreal and London.
London?
I could tell you all about London at supper.
Could you?
Certainly could.
No, John would nae approve of that, I doubt.
John?
My husband, he says it's best not to think of such places and all the wickedness that goes on there.
Or I could tell you now.
Now?
If you wanted.
Aye, you could. Hello, Hyacinth. You're on the mark, nice and early.
I think she would be, don't you? Lady Malvern, I'm quite into the part already. I feel we have much in common.
Typecasting.
I suspect Emmett thought of me immediately.
He always thinks of you, Hyacinth.
I know. Isn't that Mrs. Avery?
Mrs. Avery?
Talking to the funny little woman with the square head.
You mean the vicar's mother?
Is she? Well, of course I'm not suggesting that it's not a perfectly good Christian square head. But yes, it is. It's Mrs. Avery. She's married to...
Mr. Avery?
You know him?
No, I just had a wild guess.
Mike, don't go.
Of course not. He left the door open. Well, that's some family, the Roats. The old man just walked into the police station here, and it seems that Mrs. Roat has been in some kind of accident.
She's dead.
What?
She was murdered just outside here last night.
You knew that all the time he was here?
I only realised when he spoke on the phone just now. The sergeant must have told him. It was on the radio. I think they mentioned her name, but I wasn't listening properly. Mike, could you phone Brighton Station and ask them to get Sam to phone me immediately his train gets in?
Of course, but look, you're not worrying about anything the old man is going to say. He's obviously nuts.
But there's something you don't know, Mike. Sam did bring a child's doll back from Holland.
But it can't be the same one.
Exactly the same one he described just now. I was helping him unpack and I must have knocked it off the bed because it started playing a few notes, so I picked it up and said, "Oh, surprise," or something like that. I thought it was a present for me. Sam said no, that it was for a little girl in hospital. Some woman he'd met at the airport in Amsterdam asked him to bring it back here for her. Someone who he said he'd never met before.
And so Sam took it to the hospital?
No, this woman. That must have been Mrs. Roach. She came by here late that night to pick it up, but Sam couldn't find it. It must be still here somewhere. And that Italian woman who didn't turn up last night, that's Mrs. Roach too, because